Hey guys, Dank here, and today we're going to be looking at some tricks that we can do with the Comet sorcery. While Comet may seem like a pretty basic and straightforward projectile type spell on the surface, it actually has some pretty interesting properties that we can take advantage of. And we can use those to basically create an entirely unique playstyle that's not only really fun, but surprisingly pretty damn strong as well. So the big thing that we're going to be looking at here is some of the often overlooked properties of Comet. And the first of those is the fact that when you fully charge Comet, it actually gains a small AoE hitbox where it makes contact with the surface. And what's really great about this AoE is that it actually lingers for quite a bit. I think it lingers for, I timed it out, it was like almost half a second. I think it's probably something like 14 or 15 frames. As you can see, if you look closely with the footage, it kind of lingers where that glob of magic on the ground is. So I've heard some people who've got hit by this, and some people who see it be like, oh, that looks laggy, that looks latent. But I think the hitbox actually does match up with the animation. It's just kind of unexpected. But either way, this lingering property may seem a little insignificant on the surface, but it ultimately dramatically changes how we can use this spell. Instead of just using it as like a standard projectile that you would just throw at somebody, now you can use it almost like a temporary landmine, in a sense. One that's like extremely devastating to land. So you may have noticed that in a lot of the footage, we're getting some pretty nuclear damage numbers. And this is due to another amazing property of Comet that people often overlook, and that's its combo potential.
If we have maximum casting speed and we fire a charged Comet at our opponent while we're walking towards them, it's going to combo into a second Comet every single time, which is always going to be an insanely high damage option.
The issue is usually landing Comet in the first place. You know, with its really high damage comes a massive wind-up animation, one that is going to telegraph your intent to the opponent miles away. You know, you're not really catching somebody off guard with this in a situation that they can't react to, especially if you've used it already before in the duel. You know, they're gonna see this one coming. So that's where the lingering hitbox comes in. It's going to allow us to land it easier and in different ways. And like I said before, we're going to use this lingering hitbox to create kind of like a landmine for our opponent. If we can accurately predict where they're going to run or roll to next, we can preemptively place one of these lingering hitboxes there, and then when they run or roll there, boom, we already have a hitbox, and then they just go right into it. Now, of course, this sounds pretty challenging. You know, it requires us to accurately read where our opponent is going next, and I mean, that's no easy feat. But to get around that, we can use some setups to kind of limit our opponent's options or to make their next moves more predictable. And if you've been paying attention, there's one that we've kind of been using quite a bit so far in a lot of this footage. So this brings us to yet another overlooked attribute of Comet, and that's its chain casting properties. The second follow-up cast of Comet comes out in only 13 frames, which is one of the fastest casting speeds for anything in the entire game. And the fact that it's tied to Comet, which is one of the highest damaging spells in the game, pretty nuts stuff. So this is not only what allows us to get our Comet into Comet combos, but it also can allow you to use a follow-up cast of Comet as like a high damage mix-up. If the first one misses, you can just cast another one 13 frames later. Like, it doesn't leave a lot of window of opportunity for your opponent to punish you. But we can take the advantage of this even further. This chain casting potential, this 13 frame follow-up cast, can actually be used with other spells as well. Most chain casting was removed from the game in, I think, patch 1.05, but spells that share the same exact casting animation, you can cast them back to back. Like, you can chain cast them effectively. In the same way you would cast the same spell over and over again. You can bounce between spells that share the same animation freely. And so if we look at Comet's frame data, we can see it actually shares an animation with a few other spells. We've got Night Comet, Glintstone Comet Shard, and Shard Spiral. Now, the first two we're not going to bother with today. They have their own advantages and disadvantages. But really what we're interested here is Shard Spiral, because it's pretty much like the exact thing we're looking for. Not only does it have the same animation as Comet, which means you can cast it and then cast Comet extremely quickly after, but Shard Spiral is also like one of the best setup spells in the entire game, in the way that it creates pressure for the opponent and gives them a big obstacle that they have to react to. It's like really good at setup, and it transitions into a fast Comet cast. So this is basically exactly what we want. And if you've been paying close attention to the footage, you've probably already picked up on the fact that we've been using this in a lot of the successful attempts of this combo. So let's actually take a look at how this setup actually plays out in action. So try to pay close attention to how the opponent responds to the Shard Spiral in this footage. Typically, we're looking for them to do one of two things. The first is circling around us. You know, many people, when they see the Shard Spiral come out, they're just going to run around you in a way that, like, makes it so the spiral will never catch up with them, and they don't want to, like, go backwards because then the Shard Spiral might hit them. So a lot of people will just do this. They'll just run around you in a circle. And because that movement is so predictable and it's so, like, obvious where they're going to be next, this is a great opportunity to try to place one of our landmines. So the second thing that we can expect is for the opponent to roll in pressure. You know, they see the Shard Spiral come out and start chasing them. They see you starting up another spell cast. They want to roll at you to, you know, either avoid that follow-up cast because they think it's coming out immediately, or maybe they want to get closer to you to interrupt the cast. While this may seem really scary because the opponent's coming right at you and you're busy charging this spell up, this is actually exactly what we're looking for. Ultimately, this makes Shard Spiral one of the best spells to pair alongside Comet, especially if you're looking to set this combo up. Bouncing between the two of them while also mixing up their charged and uncharged timings will constantly keep the opponent on their toes and guessing what's coming next and when. And it's the type of situation where if they make a single mistake, it can result in them losing their entire health bar. So now let's look into another aspect that some of you guys might be curious about. Can the combo potential of the lingering Comet hitbox be used for other things? And the answer is yes. On screen I have a rough estimate of the frames of advantage that the lingering hitbox from Comet can provide. And basically what these numbers represent is the maximum number of frames an attack can be to combo out of the lingering Comet hitbox. So basically, for example, a curved greatsword R1 would be able to combo since it starts in 17 frames, which is less than the 20 listed here. So on screen are all the combos I could find with this frame data. But keep in mind that these numbers are a rough estimate. They can be influenced by a few things, such as like the distance the Comet travels before it hits the opponent, and more importantly, how long that lingering hitbox is on the ground before the opponent runs into it. So some of the slower attacks that teeter right on the line of just being fast enough to work may not work if the opponent hits the lingering hitbox too soon. Also, the numbers that you see next to the spells represent the VDEX, or the casting speed that you would need for those spells to combo. Now, all of these combos are really cool, but at the end of the day, it's usually just going to be better to combo right into a second Comet. I mean, Comet is one of like the highest damaging attacks in the entire game, and you're pretty much never going to get an opportunity to combo into it otherwise. So, like, the other attacks are cool, but usually Comet's got to be your best bet. The other ones are just for style points. But, I mean, damn, in terms of style, they sure are stylish. before we wrap this up, I also want to make a quick note on equipment. So basically, if you're looking to do stuff with the lingering hitbox, that means you're going to be charging the spell up most of the time. And if you're charging the spell up most of the time, that means you can be taking advantage of the Godfrey icon for that hefty 15% damage boost. On top of that, while Comet unfortunately doesn't get boosted by any stabs, it's one of the few spells in the game that gets uniquely boosted by a headpiece. The Azur's Glintstone Crown increases the damage of Comet by 10% at the cost of an extra 15% FP consumption. And I mean, that FP consumption, that hurts, but if we're here to build our entire playstyle around Comet and we're doing these big old Comet combos for massive damage, you better believe I'm taking that 10% damage boost every single time.
All right, guys, so I think that's going to wrap this one up. I hope I could show you some ideas on how to get some more uses out of Comet, you know, different ways to use it, different ways to apply it. I think there's a lot of potential in this spell, and don't think that what I showed in this video is the only way to use it, you know, like just after a shard spiral or something like that. You know, I'm just here to present some ideas, but I do think there's a lot of room for innovation with this spell, you know, so feel free to put your own spin on it and take it in your own direction. Also, I want to make a quick note. A lot of the lingering stuff requires free aiming the Comet, which can take a little bit of feel, a little bit of getting used to. And so you're probably not going to get it much at first. And I would say don't give up right away if you can't get this on your first few attempts. It took me a while to get a feel for it. But once I did, once it clicked, it was amazing. And all these big damage combos feel really satisfying to get. So don't give up right away. Persevere, stick with it. Apply that advice to everything in your life, I guess, and have a good one. Dank out.